All right, guys, so we've got two questions for this week's Q&A, so let's jump into them. Lewis, first and foremost, says, Keepa versus Jungle Scout versus any other sales data analysis software. What are my thoughts on them? I recommend both of them. I think that they're both great. I think it really depends on the type of arbitrage or the type of reselling that you're doing. If you want more in-depth analysis on an expensive buy, in my opinion, then Keepa's great, right? Because not only can you see the sales history of it, what it's selling for, like the sale price, the buy box price, all that third-party data, the sales history of it. You can get a lot more data, obviously, than you can just like the current numbers on Jungle Scout, because those are based off of like best seller rank and what the current sales are right now. But obviously that can change over the next month or, couple weeks potentially, or, whatever it is, especially if it's like a book where something is like, if you're like looking at it right in the beginning of textbook season or, out of textbook season, they're going to be very skewed and very different. And then obviously it could tank or it could, significantly rise. So if you're looking for like an expensive thing or to source expensive stuff or like a lot more data, then Keepa is, a lot better in my opinion. I use them both first and foremost, but Jungle Scout is definitely a better software if you're just trying to do it quickly, right? So in a lot of these things, once you kind of get into the zone, because I don't sit here and like source 10 hours a day or like put like 10 hours a day or like 8 hours a day or like whatever a full-time day is for you. I don't put like a full-time day into sourcing. I literally just do it like 20 minutes here when I have some time, maybe an hour on a Sunday, 10 minutes here when I have some time in the morning. And so I'm really about the speed of it, especially now that I'm a little bit more experienced and I kind of can like judge off the competition, judge off all that other stuff, like go down the checklist really fast. And so if you're looking at something like, online arbitrage via like a source mogul and you're like scanning a bunch of software, or like even books where you're not spending like hundreds of dollars on a book, you're just spending like 20 or 30 bucks. Chances are you don't probably want to use Keepa every single time, because then you're going to be spending minutes on a listing, if not more, maybe even 5 to 10 minutes on a listing, analyzing all the Keepa data, and it's really going to slow you down and you're not going to be able to source as much as quickly, okay? So if you're trying to get, go fast, or if you're in like a really like an in-depth sourcing mindset, and you're really trying to scale a little bit faster and get a lot of inventory, Jungle Scout is perfect because you can just hit the little JS extension. It's going to tell you what the daily sales data is, obviously what it's selling a month, and you can go off that. It's very reliable, and so it doesn't give you as much data, but it's good for speed, good for sourcing a lot faster, and it's very reliable. But if you don't have a lot of money, or if you really want to make the most of your sourcing and you're willing to spend the more time, and you're like more on the beginner side, then Keepa obviously will give you a lot more data. But one thing I will say about that is I forget what it is. I think it's eFlip. But for whatever reason, I have Keepa for free. I never paid for, I never upgraded Keepa. You don't need to, in my opinion. And I have an entire video on Keepa. If you just go to YouTube, I believe it's actually in the, it should be at least, it should be in the Amazon seller, it should be in the Amazon seller tips module in this course. But if you also just go to YouTube and type in Brian Garrett Keepa, it should pop up, which will show you how to use Keepa, all the different ways that you can look at the data if you need a run through. But like I said, if you're a little bit more strapped on cash and you want to make more of your buys, then Keepa is probably better for you, obviously, because it's going to give you more data, okay? So those are the only two that I ever used, so I can't really speak to any other sales data, but I really hope that helps, Lewis. Great question. Next one is Danny. He says, hey, so I have $500 to $1,000 to start, but I only have 2 days a week that I can work on this. The only time I have to access a computer. I'm not sure what to focus on to get started. So it's really going to depend, honestly. If you're in the course, obviously, then what I'd recommend is going to the first module. At the very end of the first module, that's going to basically give you a rundown. I think it's a 20 to 30 minute video that breaks down all the different nuances of if you like this, then you should go in this direction. If you have this amount of money and this interests you, go in this direction, right? If you only have X amount of time and this amount of money, go in this direction, right? So I've literally broken that down in a 20, 30 minute video. So definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't already. It's at the bottom of the Start Here module. I don't think it's the last lecture, obviously, but it's this a couple up from the last lecture. So check that video out. If you have already checked that video out and you're just asking for clarification in the Facebook group, then what I would say is Typically with that amount of money, I would steer you towards like more scalable, right? So I'd go like either like source mogul and like online arbitrage with software like that, or books or wholesale, right? So typically, because it sounds like you're newer and you don't have a lot of experience and you're just getting into this, I would rule wholesale out. So don't do wholesale. Instead, just go either books or online arbitrage and sourcing with a software like Source Mogul, because those are more beginner friendly. You can still make great money with them. They don't take a lot of time to source because they all come with software. If you're sourcing books, it's eFlippers and arbitrage. If you're sourcing, with online arbitrage, then you can use a software like Source Mogul. I don't teach tactical arbitrage in the course, but you can use that if you want to. It's just not something I use currently. And so that's the routes that I would recommend that you go. Check out those two modules or those two business models. But that's how I'd recommend for you. Not only will you make good money with it, not only can you leverage software with it, not only can you ship into Amazon with those and leverage obviously FBA, but it's a really, really, really good way to learn Amazon, learn all the nuances of selling, so that when you do make good money and you do build up that initial nest egg, obviously doing that, and you do want to move into a more scalable, form of it, like wholesale, where you're like really at like the start of like building a legitimate business that's going to be like scalable long term, then you'll have all the knowledge ahead of time of the Amazon platform, what sells, what to look for, and all of that stuff, right? That's stuff that like I can teach you like theory wise, but you're only really gonna know by actually doing it, sourcing products and seeing what works on a listing versus what doesn't, okay? So good questions, guys. Really hope that helps.